92% of people trust individual voices over corporate branding.
Everyone has come out and built a personal brand because that is the only defense against this kind of sea of AI content.
25% of a company's value is tied to its reputation. And that's from like the World Economic Forum or something like that.
Founder-led brands in order to win in tomorrow's world. So welcome back to Build with Dean, and today's conversation is all about personal branding in the age of AI. So how leaders can build brands that people and AI can't ignore. So I'm joined today by the fabulous Teri from Beyond & Co, and her company partners with ambitious leaders to unlock authentic personal brands that build visibility, influence, and business growth. So what's powerful about this chat is that we come at branding from different but complementary angles. And Teri's a master of narrative and helping leaders to step into the spotlight with confidence. My focus is making sure leaders are structured for the AI era so that they don't just get seen by people, but they also get recommended by algorithms, shaping decisions in today's world. So together, that story plus the visibility narrative plus technology, we're going to share some practical real world insights that you as founders or scale ups or executives can take away and start using right away. Well, hopefully. So let's dive in. So Teri, a pleasure to have you. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit so that people can get to know you?
Dean, hi. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. And thank you so much for having me on. It is such a pleasure to be on Build with Dean. As you quite rightly said, I own and manage my own personal brand agency. And essentially, we build visibility for modern leaders. I've spent the last 15, almost 20 years, but don't like to, share that too broadly, working in marketing and communications for some of the world's largest brands. So before I set up Beyond & Co, I spent nearly 9 years at JP Morgan working in their communications and marketing team. I've spent time at Experian and also Reckitt Benckiser, which is a bit like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, that type of organization, which is really where I started out in my career. And basically, the way that I've shaped Beyond & Co is to try to help leaders to share their narratives, their lived experience, their stories, in order for them to gain visibility that ultimately drives their growth and hopefully the growth of their businesses.
And it's quite a challenging area, isn't it? So, because at the moment there's this whole, what's your take on the challenges that people have when they try to do exactly what you've just said?
Yeah, I think there's a few different issues at play at the moment. Obviously, there is a huge amount of content to consume at the moment, and I think that also generates some distrust for people because they're not quite sure what they should or shouldn't be reading. There's amazing statistics out there now around people having distrust in CEOs and leaders of organizations, and the fact that like even big world brands have seen diminishing levels of trust within their company brands. But if we look at the kind of positive side of that, 92% of people trust individual voices over corporate branding. So if you're really leaning into generating your own dialogue, your own story, your own narrative, and obviously we'll get onto this later in the podcast as well, in terms of like AI and generation and how that, all feeds into one another. If you're doing that for yourself and people are recognizing you as a credible authority in the spaces that you share your thought leadership, that can only be good for you. And I think that that's really where I try to talk to the clients, prospects, networks that I speak to around, yes, there is this sort of element of distrust at the moment, but actually for you, if you're an authentic person and you're sharing your authentic thought leadership, that's a really good place to play right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what is it? People are 7 times more likely to buy from a company with a personal brand. And if you look at all of the, the big companies, whether it's from Virgin with Richard Branson or, Chanel started with Coco Chanel. And, if you go through, most of them start, with that personal brand. And I like that as well. A lot of people would say, because I mean, we work internationally with people, and I think in the UK, people are noticeably reluctant to come out and be authentic and have that personal brand. And I get it because we as British people, we're quite, oh, I wouldn't want to do that. Seems egotistical is what they say a lot, or people seem frightened, right? But everyone has a personal brand. By having
Yeah.
a LinkedIn, you have a personal brand.
I think, like, even outside of LinkedIn, even in your day-to-day life, like, I remember one of my friends when I was starting the business that I previously worked at JP Morgan. He sent me a quote that said, build a brand so strong, people recognize you before they've even met you. And that is exactly what you're trying to do, right? Your reputation precedes you before you've even entered a room. Like, I want to work with Dean because he's incredibly charismatic and he really knows his stuff. Like, I want to work with Teri because she's, always really bubbly and makes me feel at ease. You want that for yourself and for the people that you work with. Outside of any kind of contrived marketing that sits around it, you need to, be living and breathing that. I've given the example before of, I would never go on a second date with somebody that was rude to the waiter. Like, you are living and breathing your personal brand in every single moment of your life. It's just in terms of commercializing it as a leader, you obviously lead into a public presence and persona that sits around that.
I saw a post recently by Stephen Bartlett, and it kind of went something like, your personal brand. Everyone has a personal brand, and your personal brand is really important. If I asked you whether your reputation mattered to you, you'd say it was very important. You'd say it's incredibly important in everything that you do. And so, online, you have a digital reputation. And so it's really important to be in control of that. And if you don't have a personal brand, or you're not intentional with your personal brand, thus are you out of control of your reputation online, that thing that people are so proud about in person, my reputation to you or to my friend or to my, colleagues and clients. Reputation is everything, but online, that's to me what personal brand is, right?
Yeah, absolutely that. And I think anybody that thinks that it's like your reputation isn't intrinsically linked to the success of your business or how profitable your business is has their head in the sand completely. You see the stats like I think the stats like 25% of a company's value is tied to its reputation. And that's from like the World Economic Forum or something like that. So if you're not managing your reputation to a degree, then someone else is doing it for you. And I don't necessarily want to have my competitors or people that don't know me managing my reputation as I, build out my digital and online presence. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. I like to flip this around to people. So when people say, "Well, no, it's just not for me," and I say, "Well, in some ways, are they doing a disjustice? So they're either in business to make money, or they're in business to help people, and it's whether they really believe they're in business to help people. Because if you are in business to help people, and you think about your personal brand, if those people that you could help by coming out and being, creating that awareness for yourself, you could help people. So I kind of flip it in terms of them not, doing it injustice to the people that they could help as well, if they could be more far reaching with that personal brand. What's your thoughts on that?
I think I completely agree with you, and I think it's a really important element of personal branding. I talk quite a lot about self-promotion versus value creation. And I actually think if you think, I have like executives and leaders that come to me and they're like, we know that this is important, but it feels really uncomfy for us. We don't really know how to go about it. And I say exactly what you just said, Dean. Think about the value and the lived experience that you've created that you could be sharing with people. You know, failed startups or thriving startups that you've grown to a point that you've exited, or you've gone into another organization with all of that valuable insight and helped them to grow into an even bigger organization. If you look at some of the, most prevalent entrepreneurs right now, people, and you've mentioned him already, Stephen Bartlett, Daniel Priestley. I'm hugely girl crushing on Emma Greed right now and love
Yeah.
all of her content. If you haven't come across her yet, definitely find her. Her recent podcasts have been amazing. And ultimately, all three of those leaders are doing exactly the same thing. Yes, of course, they're becoming more public about their their aspirations for their businesses, their leadership, all of those types of things, but they're actually sharing the value that they have intrinsically created, and they're sharing that en masse with people in order to generate more followers, more engagement, etc. So if you come at it from a place of, this is the value that I could be creating for the people that are engaging with me, versus let's share all of the big wins that I have achieved, then I think British people especially feel a lot more comfortable coming at it from a place of value versus a place of posturing, for want of a better phrase. And I think that the balance of that really does determine whether someone's successful in this space, or it's kind of, what's the right word? It's all vanity metrics sitting behind what they're actually generating online, especially.
Yeah, it's just flipping the frame or the mindset or the lens in which you see it can really help someone to, to make a big difference. And I think as well, when you see the AI apps that are coming out and the kind of the sea of AI content, so things like Nano Banana and VO3, and there's lots of things, aren't there, that will allow people, and over the next 6 months, probably not, not the too distant future, there'll probably be a sea of AI video content. The leveling, that level, what's the word? Playing field has been leveled, I think, in terms of how much content one person can produce versus a company with 100 people, and it's becoming a bit kind of leveled. So, for that reason, I think it's even more important for people to come out and show that authenticity, because that's the only, um, I think that's one of Daniel Priestley's lines, actually. The only way to compete against a sea of AI content is to be authentically you.
Yeah. Like, I could not agree more. At the end of the day, people buy from people, and you can't recreate that through AI. AI has many, many amazing things. I use AI on an hourly basis within my business. And I love it. But there are things that, the bots just can't do. They can't create a feeling of trust. They can't create a sense of vulnerability. They can't instill confidence in a person or in a room of investors when you're delivering that, first investor day speech. AI can't do any of those things. And if you're not,
Yeah.
cultivating that authenticity that you have about yourself, that really special sauce that can only be delivered by you, then, you know, you are going to become part of this mass sea of content. And I think Daniel Priestley was talking about it on one of his webinars recently, where he was talking about, you know, trying to lift off your personal brand in this current environment, and how many people are now talking about it. But ultimately, if you're not already kind of, on the rise or trying to fly your aeroplane, this fog of AI content is coming in really quickly, and it's just going to start drowning people out. So you've got to kind of get ahead of the curve with your authenticity now, so that you're not then trying to like fight the barrage that's coming.
Couldn't agree more. And I think so. So then, what we probably want to transition into, I think we've sold it to people, and I think everyone's really thinking, yeah, we got to do that. So we've got a channel of scale ups, and it's probably some big businesses watching as well, but probably some startups starting a business. And I think it's relevant at every level. Even the big businesses, they're going to have to come out and have founder led brands in order to be in order to win in tomorrow's world. And so that means maybe their C-suite team, maybe they need to look at how they brand those, aids. It's not just kind of sales either, or marketing. It's about, staff retention. It's about, acquisitions, deals, there's a lot of money involved at stake. So let's go into, how do we do this? And what are the challenges for people? Like, so you have somebody and they come to you, like, how do you solve that? Because they're not going to know how to do it often.
Yeah. I think a lot of leaders come to me and they know that visibility is really important, but a lot of them don't have the time, kind of clarity of message or confidence to share that. And we've obviously already touched on some of those things. And I think ultimately, by working with someone that is within the personal branding space, if they're doing the right thing by you, they're helping you to discover and define your messaging. And what I mean by discovery is, what makes you you, what lived and career experiences have you had? What do you want to be known for? Why do you want to be known for that? What do you feel comfortable in sharing, not sharing? Where do you want to play? I've had executives that have come to me and they've been like, I want to write a book and I want to be a TEDx speaker. I mean, amazing. Like, these are huge goals, but they're willing to put the work in. Awesome. So you have those kind of first two stages of sort of discovery and definition where you're really honing in on what those messages are. And then you move through to the next phase, which is really about like building a strategic calendar and sort of channel matrix. LinkedIn is only one piece of the puzzle. There's lots of other places that you need to be showing up. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about this, Dean, in regards to kind of AI and search engine prevalence and things like that. And then ultimately you take the learnings from that building stage and you amplify that and you take what's good and do more of it and you adapt what hasn't quite worked so well and then, you know, either get rid of it, like fail quickly, or you decide to augment and pivot your strategy in order to, reach the audiences that you're really after. But I think ultimately, whether you're kind of someone within an organization or the founder of an organization, lots of people wait until it's perfect before they get going. But actually sharing your thoughts and commentary and sharing that journey early will stand you in really good stead as you build out your visibility over a period of time. And let's be completely honest, this isn't a quick fix situation. This is something that, just like any other relationship, takes time to cultivate and takes an investment of time to be great in that relationship, and to build trust and credibility. And I think a lot of people just want the quick win, and there are obviously quick wins, but in order to do it authentically, incredibly over a period of time, you need to invest yourself in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's definitely a long-term side of things. And I think, we see the same when we have people for the business accelerators. And so business is very much the same. If you wait till it's all perfect and you could just start this £10 million business, the opportunity probably doesn't exist anymore. And right now is a really kind of good time to start it because the fog's coming in. But you wait 6 months to plan it, and the opportunity probably doesn't exist anymore because everyone has come out and built a personal brand because that is the only defense against this kind of sea of AI content. So, and I think you're right as well. In the platforms to build on and learning, you all the best things in life. You can't learn to ride a bike without falling off, and falling off hurts, and you might break a bone, but you've got to get back up. And driving a car, how painful was that to try and get your license to drive the car? If you want to become an athlete, all the best things in life take a lot of pain and effort. So it's not an easy ride, is it? As they go, maybe they start with their LinkedIn, maybe they have then some socials, that they build up to that book and that TEDx. But no point going for a book and a TEDx talk if you don't have an audience. You
Yeah.
gotta. So it's long time, like you say, but also probably a rough ride. You've got to learn from what works and learn more so from what doesn't work.
Yeah. I think so. And I think it's all about, tonality. Like I said, I've used the word authentic a lot, but, some people do take missteps. I'm sure I will take missteps. I most certainly have in earlier stages, like in other roles outside of the
With that, that's
undergrad.
great.
Exactly. I mean, I did made a bit of a muck up a few weeks ago, and it's horrible as a business owner. The buck completely stops with you, and you know that you've messed up. But we're only human, right? So everybody's going to do that, and I think what I also see with a lot of the leaders and executives that I work with is at the beginning, they really don't want to do certain things. Like I have a CEO that I work with. I've worked with her for a really long time. I'm very, very lucky, actually. I worked with her at JP Morgan, and she's now gone on to be the CEO of a hedge fund in Australia, and we still continue to work together. And I'm trying to get her at the moment to do pieces to camera on her iPhone. And she was like, absolutely not. I feel completely uncomfortable doing that. And I was like, well, what if I call you, or like if we, do what we're doing now, and then I just kind of edit it and take the sound bites? And she was like, oh yeah, I feel completely comfortable with that. And I'm like, well, what's different? And she said, because I'm having a conversation with you, and that's what makes me feel comfortable. And I think a lot of the time people try to do things that make them feel really uncomfy, but people can see that, right? They can see that you're not comfortable in that certain situation, and you've got to build up to that point of comfort. Not complete comfort, you still need to be a bit nervous, right? But ultimately, that you're challenging yourself, but it doesn't feel too alien. And I think a lot of personal brand advisors kind of go with what the metrics say, but sometimes you've got to augment what makes that person feel happier and more confident in the delivery of their messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get that quite a lot as well in terms of throughout not just to the person branding side, but socials, and because video is an incredibly important part, and every algorithm is valuing video. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. And every single person that we've worked with is very uncomfortable going on video to start off with. And it's just the same as anything to start off with, and say, if you've decided and you agree that you're going to build a personal brand, it's one of those painful things that you're just going to have to do. And it starts with not caring, and it starts with authenticity is winning at the moment. So, you know, brilliant if you have editors and you have polished backgrounds and you have wonderful, nice, great big plants behind you. There's a reason why we've done this not like that, because it's more authentic. But actually, a lot of authentic content is winning. So people coming out and just going to camera, it's a practice, and once you've done it 5 to 10 times, it becomes comfortable. Like anything, it becomes a habit. It becomes normal. You fire and wire in your brain that it's normal. So very much kind of first time problems, I suppose, isn't it? And getting them to do it.
I, I think so. And I think it's very much like practice makes perfect. And the two executives that I'm working with at this organization, you know, their CIO doesn't want to be on camera at all. And we recently did an interview that, like, I interviewed the two of them for some content that we're creating. And we've now got an amazing YouTube asset. Yes, I agree that you do have to just kind of do it. Like I do it. I didn't feel particularly comfortable doing it initially, but I've got to walk the talk as a personal brand advisor and do what, the metrics are teaching us. But
Yeah.
I enjoy it now. It fills my cup to have great conversations with people and to share some of the things that I've learned in the 15, 20 years that I've been doing this. So yeah, you get more
There's
comfy.
possibly well, absolutely, and there's possibly a discovery journey there about getting more comfortable with yourself. The parts that you like about yourself, your parts that you don't like about yourself. That authenticity is not. It's not. It's not polishing it in any way. It's being comfortable with who you are. The other thing I think that people find difficult is everything in life is habit and rhythm. So getting into that kind of structure and that rhythm. So, I'll often say to people, like, so we get people to do a 3-2-1 technique. So pick 3 channels, two topics, and then just
Yeah.
post once a day. Sooner or later, you're gonna have a personal brand. Then you can start layering in things like video and carousels, so you can get a bit more information across, or whatever it is, however you want to come across and get that information across to the audience. Um, but the rhythm, you got to start somewhere, and
Yeah.
the video, you've got to start somewhere. But you can't have a personal brand if you don't show sides of your personality. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Exactly. Or
Yeah.
going back to my earlier point, you have like everybody has a personal brand, but because you're not doing it intentionally, it's up to everybody else to make of that brand what they want to. You're not
And
being
also,
You're not being
But the
intentional.
algorithm, Terry,
Yeah.
and also the algorithm is in control of what it thinks of you because you're not telling it. You're not.
Exactly right, right? I think I saw a statistic the other day that was actually I've mentioned this a few times, so it wasn't the other day, but because I'm getting old, I think it's more recent than it was. Um, but I think it's kind of like somebody needs to see you 11 times to recognize you, and they need to consume between 2 and 7 hours of your content to build an affinity with you. So all of the things that I'm sure Dean's going to go on and tell us about, why AI is so important, and I hope he does because I'm learning lots. Um, Basically, the more content you're creating, the more the engines are consuming, and the more likely they are to serve your messages to anybody searching for personal brand, startups, tech, like op tech, prop tech. I've heard all of the different tech scenarios now.
Yeah.
Because you are being active and sharing what you think with people in the digital environment. And that's what's gonna bump you up to the top of the list. You'd probably say it a lot more eloquently than me, but
Yeah, well, no, I wouldn't agree with that. And you're definitely not getting old, bless you. So in fact that I think when it comes to your personal brand, so I would say it probably starts in layers. So I think and you've got your own style of things, but if I think for how we would do it on our side of things, I would get someone to tackle their LinkedIn first so that they could become an authoritative figure. And I look at it kind of like a pyramid, I suppose. And then I think they have this the SEO, which is not search engine optimization anymore, but search everywhere optimization. So
right.
the idea that people search on Google, of course they do, but they also search on TikTok, YouTube, Reddit. They search in so many different areas now. And then there's the decision side of it, where people make decisions of which people to work with or which brands to work with. That happens on socials too. So if you're not there, there's just simply not a decision to be made. So whether you do personal branding or not, your company has to be there somewhere, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Um,
Yeah.
so so you kind of have that, but then equally, I think if I am someone who's going to choose someone to do a TED talk, or if I'm someone who's going to choose whether I'm going to read your book, or I'm someone who's going to choose whether to have you on my podcast, um, then or whether to give you an award, or whether to put you in my magazine or my newspaper, and I have two people, and one tells me nothing, and one is charismatic, is wonderful, then who am I going to pick? You know?
Yeah.
So, and that's how AI is gonna work. So if you think that the sources that, well, there's people in AI, that's how people are gonna work also, who are gonna pick you. They're gonna pick you based off what they know. And, you know, I'm not gonna invite people on my podcast who I can't work out whether that would be a fun conversation. Like, easy to invite you on, Terry, because you have such a wonderful personality and it'd just be a great conversation. And I think you can add value to the audience, which is fantastic. So, but when you think of it from AI just wants to know, like, and trust people. And so it's just the same as a human. So, and when you have ChatGPT pulls more from kind of Wikipedia and from YouTube. Well, Wikipedia and Reddit more actually, and Perplexity and Google AI mode, part of it, not the traditional search. Um, so they'll pull more from YouTube and from Reddit, and um, so there's kind of a theme there that two things come up quite a lot, which is Reddit and YouTube. So I
Yeah.
would say for businesses and also for people, if you can be a leader within a business and have a presence on Reddit, for example, and actually engage with the community, you engage with your users, and you can find the time to do that, then the likelihood is that your brand will also get featured. And then, but YouTube, I mean, YouTube is where it's the number one cited source, but you can't have a YouTube unless you can have video.
Yeah.
And so there's a journey that personal branding probably leads with YouTube, which probably leads to speaking gigs and podcasts, which probably leads to the book opportunity and the TED Talk.
Yeah.
So it's the whole what AI is looking for actually is going to lead people to need to bring out a personal brand of some kind, or they probably are unlikely to get cited. If you're a founder today, AI loves a founder-led brand as well, so it's more likely to cite you if there's a founder behind the brand with strong opinions, likability, and then you factor in that kind of social search everywhere, YouTube. It's I think the stat was, people are 9 times more likely to buy from a cited personal brand or company in an AI
Wow.
engine
That's an amazing
than
stat.
they are from Google.
Yeah.
So, and that's not my stat, that's Gartner, I think it was, or yeah, Gartner. So I think that speaks volumes, but you can't actually get cited, in my opinion, unless you have um, as a person, unless you have some kind of a personal brand.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you think about where we now search for information, like I very rarely will go onto Google now and be like, where can I take my toddler, at the weekend, or, what's a great 2 to 3 day travel experience for my husband and I and our toddler. I would never do that. I would put that in ChatGPT or into Perplexity. I would probably interrogate it a little bit more, because sometimes you just end up with like a plethora of, to your point, Wikipedia style sources. But then I would most likely go onto like Instagram and start looking up the places that it suggested, because I want to build an affinity with said brand. Um, so yeah, I can, like, if you think about how we are consuming information, everything that you talk about, and I've listened to some of your other talks on YouTube, is all very much ringing true with me, because I think that traditional search will drop and AI search will just continue to increase. And that's what we will see.
Mm. It's a fascinating world that's coming. I mean, because I see that, like I was talking to uh, well, this has happened for me for a restaurant brand recently. It's happened to me for a paving and stone company, um, and more recently a roofing company. And so, the restaurant company saying to me that, um, well, I just get loads of my business from maps. Like, I don't really need SEO. Like, I mean, all my business comes to, I've got a really great business team. I said, oh, yeah, fantastic. But if you think like all three of those businesses, I would go to ChatGPT. So if I was looking for I do now. I do it now. I'm looking for a restaurant and I'll go there. There's two things I do. I still sometimes open my maps, restaurant near me, but it does get frustrating sometimes because I've still got to do that research and I've got to look for them. And I find myself going, well, that's no, oh, I don't really know. Oh, I don't want to eat that. Or you go through that
Yeah.
Netflix decision-making moment in the middle of a street, often. And the opposite is that I pull out my phone and I put in, steak restaurant near me, and then into ChatGPT, the same kind of thing. Steak restaurant in, I don't know, London, or in, let's be more specific, in Reading, and
Yeah.
then Reading town centre even. Let's be more specific because that's what you probably would search, something specific, right? And then it'll pull up a list of people, and then you'll go, "Oh no, I don't want national chains. I want something really quirky." And then it'll give you another 3 or 4 or 5, and then I'll go, "Okay, but actually, I want a price range that's kind of probably between 30 and £100. I'm not looking for bougie this evening, And then ChatGPT will just literally, or Claude, or whatever there are other engines, they'll just literally come back and keep refining it until you have the clicks. But um, the world that we're going to is that then they'll just click that, and then they'll get straight through to the booking system using the agent. There will be no maps. There will be no website for those construction companies, those restaurant companies, if I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. But
Yeah.
and it'll be fascinating to see how that works for, when you play that into kind of like a personal brand and people are trying to find, if that matters to them, someone that resonates with them or has the same values as them and that kind of thing. and they can just fine tune it. Like, and you'd be the one, like, say your thing was sustainability and you really believe that you're the only person in your industry that does sustainability, then, and you can infiltrate that within your personal brand, and AI picks that up, then anytime someone searches for that, your name comes up. Like, that's invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy.
It is nuts. My favorite prompt in ChatGPT, now that I use it often, and again, there are other AI search engines, is knowing what you know about me, like, give me this recommendation, because I think I'm using it quite prevalently now. But that's always a really good prompt to see what it
Yeah.
comes up with. Knowing what you know about me, or knowing that I've stayed at X place, or that like you recommended this place and I really enjoyed it. Can you now give me restaurant recommendations in said area? Um, it's a pretty good prompt.
Mm. And it's all about the prompt and the prompt engineering. So, um, okay, so let's think. Let's try and help people who are watching. So they've decided they're going to do it. So video's one thing. We talked about LinkedIn. What
Yep.
else might they need to do to go from okay, I'll do it, to TED Talk, and now I'm going to write my book?
Yeah, that's a big question. Well,
It is.
look, in my view, LinkedIn is just one piece of the puzzle, right? And it is a
Yeah.
completely it shouldn't be underestimated or devalued in any way. It's a free platform for professionals that is available to you 24/7. I go to a networking event, and the founder of said networking event, Network My Club, Bradley, said on a webinar the other day that it is the networking event that never sleeps. And I was like, I like that. I'm going to borrow that one.
Mm.
But the prevalence of LinkedIn, and if you look at how people are engaging with LinkedIn at the moment, and its
Yeah.
increasing prevalence, obviously really important platform, and still completely underutilized, which just gets lost on me every time I look at the statistic. But in terms of, if you're looking for purely social media management and content creation, obviously you should be working with a social media marketing person. However, if you're looking to build a personal brand that opens doors to all of those things that we've talked about, speaking engagements, being cited in particular publications or journals or research, or publishing your own book, creating your own podcast one day, there is obviously going to be lots of other marketing channels that you need to consider within that mix. So obviously my advice would always be, work with someone that has experience in creation of personal brand and personal brand across channels, someone that will work with you to think through the strategy of what you're looking to convey. But going back to your 3-2-1 method, Dean, if you're literally a person at home who maybe doesn't have that inclination yet, or the money to invest in working with somebody, I think your point around really honing in on what you want to be known for and why, and also looking at the people that you admire and where they are, to borrow the very overused phrase, I need to think of another phrase here, but, where they're showing up online and looking at their playbook whilst you're figuring out what feels authentic to you. It's obviously very complimentary to borrow the strategies of other people as you figure that out.
Yeah.
I quite often speak to my graphic designer, and I've like screenshotted things from people on Instagram, for example, or LinkedIn, and been like, I want to recreate this, but with Beyond and Co's voice. I'll work on the copy and everything, but visually it
You don't always
stimulates.
have to invent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Just start with what feels good to you, or what you're like,
Yeah.
actually, I really enjoy consuming that. Like, how can I do that for me? And it really does depend on like what you're trying to deliver. If you're trying to raise your visibility internally because you want to be promoted, versus obviously trying to, secure startup capital for your business, or, you know, you're not experienced whatsoever in the business that you're looking to create, but you've got lots of amazing transferable skills from all of the other experience that you've had in your career. So how do you articulate those messages and make create a story that sits around that and what you're looking to achieve. So
Mm.
there's lots of ways to get started. I think my main piece of advice is not to wait until something is perfectly before you get started. And to your point around posting on LinkedIn once a week, post once, but engage with other people. Another one of my kind of peers slash colleagues talks a lot about social media having the word social in it for a reason. It's a two-way conversation. Like, follow your competitors, follow the people that you admire, like and comment on people's posts. And again, I'm sure you'll have much better statistics, but the algorithms will reward you for doing that, and they will see that you're visible and engaged and part of a community of thought leaders sharing your expertise in that space. And if you're doing that on a consistent basis, they start to reward you. They're rewarding me. Like, I'm literally the poster child of what I'm trying to deliver, right? I've spent 9 years working, 9 years working for JP Morgan, which was highly regulated financial services. You know, you weren't really encouraged too much to share your opinions on social media.
Both come from quite regulated backgrounds, don't we?
Exactly.
And in that, yeah.
Exactly. And then now I've stepped into, utilizing my expertise in communications and marketing to help people to deliver and drive their own personal brand. But I'm also doing the same thing for myself. So the fact that,
Yeah.
you and I met was through a mutual connection. I've participated in another podcast where I met somebody at a networking event. Things happen outside of LinkedIn. But then on the other hand, I've had like prospects come to me and say, I'm really leaning towards us working together because I'm really like enjoy and have an affinity with the content that you're sharing on LinkedIn or Instagram. It's really resonating with me. I think we'd work really well together. Or you're starting to get like inbound inquiries now because you're obviously being so prolific at posting.
And also what it does is it stops you from working with people who you wouldn't get on with because they just don't work with you because they know, which is great. So then everyone you're ever going to work with is actually probably going to like you because they know enough about you to make that decision. But I find I've written down a few things here. So as you were mentioning that, I think like, to try and to use an analogy. So if you think like if someone wants to run, there's a big difference between running and becoming an athlete. And so the reason why you do something will dictate how you do it and whether invest in that and your mindset towards that. So yeah, I think if it's a case of the 3, 2, 1 where people start, and maybe a lot of people who will do that have no intention of building a personal brand, have no intention of writing a book and a TEDx, having a TEDx talk. Um, but if someone does, and that is their goal and their vision, then their mindset potentially might be slightly different. So you've still got to start to run. Like you've
Yeah.
still got to be imperfect in everything where you want to be an Olympic athlete. You have to be imperfect. You have to do the kind of fail quick, learn fast stage. So I think, and then it's about how your mindset around it. So are you investing in that? Are you bought into that to kind of go on that journey? Um, and then it becomes about, once you do get started, it becomes about reps. It's like a muscle, isn't it? Where,
Yeah.
to start off with, you're weak. To start off with, it probably isn't. Maybe people get 1 or 2 months in and they're thinking, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I'm cut out for this," or, maybe that video wasn't very good, or I'm looking at what I've done and all this. Everyone's going to go through that journey because you can't get to perfection without imperfection and that kind of. So I think as you were saying, that kind of reminded me that, you know, you, everybody's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But if your vision is podcasts, books, awards, PR, then you're probably not going to do that if you do nothing. If you do nothing, you get nothing. Um,
Yeah.
so it's about doing something. But like when I think about where we started, so we decided we wanted to launch a YouTube channel. We want to be present in more places and um, to kind of practice what we preach, I suppose.
Yeah.
But to the point where, it's only 10 weeks ago that we launched a YouTube channel. There's 62 videos up there, you know, so it's kind of, but we are also, from a content side of things, it's crazy. You know, we have 800 hours of manpower in our small business, and 400 of those go on content.
Yeah.
Only 400 go on the actual services that we deliver. So, you know, we practice what we preach. I think that to win in 2026 for AI and personal branding, because that's where we sit. We do LinkedIn, we do video production, we do social media. But when people say, "What do you do, Dean?" I say, we help founders and experts who want to become less invisible, more of a visible in demand with lead generation. We do that through AI SEO or AEO, GEO, this thing over here, or we do it through personal branding. So we only do two things really, and they both kind of do the same thing. But
Yeah.
in order to win for both of them, I think you have to be everyone. And so what that means is, for us, is like, the reason there's 400 hours involved and so many team members is because we're updating our Google business profile, where we've got a Reddit strategy, we've got a YouTube strategy, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. There isn't a channel where it's not in the strategy. So
Yeah.
would I say I'm the best ever? Probably not. I'm learning as I go along. Definitely not. Is the
Yeah.
Definitely not. But that's the fun of it. You become the person you want to be along the journey.
I think that's a really great quote, to be honest, because I think that is absolutely right. When I think about a lot of the clients that I've worked with, they've come to me with kind of like marketing and communications, conundrums, shall we say, for want of a better phrase. But a lot of that, when you look at somebody's personal branding, I spend so much time with business leaders and executives who come to me asking for one thing, but ultimately there's a story behind why they want it. They're worried that they might be made redundant. They've been hankering for a promotion for a really long time, and they're wondering whether it's the right time to leave their business. Um, you know, their their current leadership team is really reluctant to be visible because of one PR issue or another, but they really feel it's important as a new leader in that space to make their business more visible. So you get a lot of people that come to me that then end up like sharing a lot about their personal story, and then it's really up to me in partnership with them to help distill that into something that feels like, you know, the the, the red
It's an
lippy.
emotional journey, isn't it? It needs discovery as well.
Exactly, and that's why, like, in my process, I call it discovery, definition, building, and amplification, because unless you're willing to go through that discovery phase.
Define and build. I love that.
Yeah, because unless you're willing to put the work in the discovery phase, it's actually all as a marketer, I'm really gonna be able to deliver for you is something that feels tactical to me, which isn't really where I want to be working. Um, and something that may deliver something in the short term, but isn't built upon for the long. So
Mm.
the discovery phase is one of the most important elements of personal branding and shouldn't be overlooked. And then going back to your comment about, how many different platforms and the content strategy that you have to adopt and adapt to do that. I talk a lot about content atomization. And this is a borrowed term from somebody else that works in personal branding called Amelia Sordell, who, if you're into personal branding, talks a lot about just effing post it is her slogan. It's not really how I go about my personal branding, but she's got a huge following. And again, there's lots of things that you can learn from the way that she's gone about it. But she talks
Yeah.
about content atomization, and really, as a marketer, all that is utilizing a piece of content across channels. And you can do that really easily with AI, right? You put something, this is my LinkedIn post, or this is my transcript from my conversation with Dean. Can you help me to write a blog post, for example? And obviously, AI will spit it out. Purely AI generated content sometimes doesn't perform quite as well as authentically written content, but you can take that as a basis and then repurpose it, or extract quotes from that to post on Instagram, or have sound bites from this video that we're recording to repurpose on TikTok or Facebook or wherever. And I think a lot of people really find it very overwhelming to think about all of the different places that they need to show up in order to increase their prevalence in search. However, if you take a simple idea and, crush it up into lots of atoms and create that model where you're repurposing it in lots of different places, it suddenly becomes a lot more digestible in terms of workload to share the core messages to you as you build that out in your personal brand. And that's what I say to a lot
Yeah.
of the leaders that I work with.
Yeah, and definitely you have to find a way to do that. And the algorithms have made that harder by
Yeah.
making you do stuff because the algorithm wants you to do stuff for their own platform. And so they're getting jealous almost, the algorithms of, oh, you've already posted it on LinkedIn or, but the audiences. So from an intent point of view, is slightly different, but we do the same thing, so um, the blog post or the YouTube video can become either way. YouTube becomes the blog post, becomes some LinkedIn post, becomes Google Business Profile, and you can just make some tweaks if you need to for that audience or for that algorithm. But I think it's it's just like going to the gym. It's just
Yeah.
like, a couple of years ago, I was up in a different place and maybe probably a couple of stone heavier and thinking, how do I get to the gym and how do I get back in shape? And I wouldn't say I'm in shape like there are many others with their personal brands who've got really I'm no Alex or Mosey going on here, but the but then I think when you start that journey and you go, right, I've got a couple of stones to lose, it starts with discipline and it starts with, okay, well then you have to start somewhere. You have to buy into it. You have to value it and you have to do it every day. It's going to be painful for a long period of time. So, and you start to get stronger. And by 6 months in, it's like, well, what was all the fuss about? Like now, and it's similar to when I describe setting up a YouTube channel, initially spending 6 months thinking, I can't launch it. I don't have time. We can't get going. And we've done 60 videos in 10 weeks. When you
Yeah.
plow yourself into something, anything's possible. You've just got to flip that mindset and get going and learn and iterate, learn and fail and iterate. You know, and if it's embarrassing, because believe me, it was, because 2 weeks in, we had something like, I don't know, 100 viewers and 14 subscribers 2 weeks in. But then, that can all change if you just keep going, and then it becomes a little bit more powerful, a little bit more powerful, and then you get that snowball effect. So that it's probably the same. I find that when we're working with people, that they come out of their shell, they have that discovery stage, and you're right. Then it's about building as you go along.
Yeah. I think so. And I think like the key thing there really in that story around your YouTube journey, which is honestly awesome, by the way. So congratulations, because I've seen the viewer numbers now, and let's just say they're nowhere near 100 or a couple of hundred. So congratulations.
Well,
Um,
we're getting them.
I think the big thing is that you need to remain resilient. And I went through this blip as well, right? I'd been posting every day 2 or 3 months in. I was like, I'm not quite sure if this is the right thing to be posting. I'm kind of, you know, again practicing what I preach, walking the talk. I'm doing my research. All of the research tells me this is what people want to know about, and I'm refining my offer. And I'm obviously trying like to have tenable links to what I'm trying to do in and around my thought leadership. And I was like, oh God, like I'm at a loss now what to write. I'm not getting the right engagement. And it comes back around again. And you have something like an opportunity like this. And, it takes work to prepare and stuff like that. But it's great when you have these conversations because there's lots of ways that you can look at it and repurpose it going forwards. And I think people just need to kind of like give some stuff a go and not expect to be perfect at it first time round. And your gym analogies are completely correct. You've just got to keep going. And when you're doing your squats and you feel like the barbell's going to collapse in on you or whatever, you know, maybe just take a bit of weight off sometimes and pivot and try something different.
Yeah. Consistency is key as well, isn't it? Now, listen, do you think there's a difference does it make any difference B2B or B2C?
Look, in like my sort of area of expertise is predominantly in B2B. But I do think that if you look at influencers more broadly, if we're talking about B2C, obviously we're all aware of people that are particularly great in this space. But what I do think is that there is a lot to be learned for B2B marketers, leaders, executives embracing their personal brand from influencers that are doing this in the B2C environment. And what I mean by that is I borrow often content that is being served to me by people that I follow on Instagram who predominantly talk about brands that are within fashion, travel, food and drink, we've talked about, sport. And I'm like, that's great. Like, I could use that in my B2B environment. And I think B2B marketers aren't quite as experimental as B2C marketers,
Yeah.
and there's like B2B leaders, I should say, maybe aren't quite as like entrepreneurial or open-minded about the ways.
It's that kind of prudent side of things, Terry. So when I speak to people in the US, even in the UAE, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, let's have a go, and so it's really energetic. I
Yeah.
want to have a go at it. And when I speak to a lot of British people, there are some. They're not so much like there's not many. Most of them say I don't want to go on camera. Most of the people we've done LinkedIn authority marketing for don't want to go on camera. Even though we're taking over the CEO's profile, we want them to come out. We want there to be video, and so sometimes we've got to work with what we've got, make it happen. Um, but and then we have some people that are fantastic. But what I always find surprising is this: when I meet with people, and I meet with a lot of people, I probably have 4 or 5 meetings a day now. And I'm trying to cut that down. I'm trying to tell people I don't want to meet with them. Although I was really looking forward to this one. Um, so, but I meet some really wonderful people, and we have some really great clients that don't do personal branding, that do either the LinkedIn authority or the social media, typically, or the AEO and GEO side of things. And so we're always working with the CEOs or, sometimes the marketing director, but typically we're working with the founder of the brand. Um, and they've got some great personalities. And sometimes I sit there and I listen to them talk and they're really fun. It's like, like when I look at you, someone who's fun, like we could have a lovely conversation. I could probably sit here for another 3 hours and have a wonderful conversation. But it's some of my clients and people that I sit with, prospects even, and I think, oh, you're like, you don't even know it. Like, you don't think you're an interesting person, but you're like, you've got banter, you're funny, you're quirky. Like, there's so many sides to you, no matter who they are. I sometimes sit in front of them and I think you could easily have a personal brand, but if I say it to them, they're like, no, man, who's gonna listen to me? Like, they don't. Is it like a confidence thing? Do you think that even at that level, people just feel uncomfortable with it? Strange, isn't it?
It is strange, and I think as we've said already in today's conversation, I think the prevalence of personal branding is rising. My view is very much you have one whether you want one or not. It's just whether you're actually intentionally cultivating it. And I think anybody that wants to grow either in their career or their business, that isn't intentionally cultivating their personal brand will ultimately be left behind because they're not, sharing all of the great experiences and thought leadership that they're gaining during, their career or their journey. I think in the UK, people really think that, shouting about your achievements is arrogant. I think that it's confident, but again, my view on this is it's not about self promotion, it's about value creation. And if you can shift that mindset from, to your point about British leaders that you meet, if you can shift that mindset from, I don't want to go on LinkedIn and I don't want to be talking about what I'm doing, to, okay, so you're going to this conference next week. Can you come back to me with the 3 key takeaways from that conference? Because a lot of people wanted to go to Cannes Lions, but they don't get to go. So what's your big takeaway as a head of marketing or head of marketing director. I'm just using a marketing example rather than I've been at Cannes Lion all week. It's an aspirational event for marketing leaders. Like, that doesn't serve anybody else but you, but you actually sharing your perspective with your commentary is serving all of the people that are connected with you. And I think if more people got into that mindset of value creation, they would feel far less uncomfortable with cultivating a personal brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just that some people, as well, have such a rich knowledge bank that they've garnered over a number of years, CEOs, particularly, and what they know. And so if they have any kind of charisma, which most of them do, but don't feel that they do, um,
Yeah.
then those are the people that they're just waiting for. If they came out and they had a conversation here with me and someone could see it, it's like an audition for that podcast that someone's going to see. This guy has 50 years of knowledge or 40 years of knowledge or 30 years of knowledge, whatever their age they are. But some of them, are in their 60s and 70s with this vast, rich amount of knowledge. They're primed, right, to go onto these podcasts. They're primed to write the books. They're primed to do the TED Talks. They've got the experience. They've got the caliber. It's just such a shame that they don't have the confidence to pick up and like maybe work with you or I to kind of help them to bring out that um, special sauce in them.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that a lot of it sits within whether somebody wants to enter a period of growth. And I think ultimately, if you're looking to create something that is like significant and scalable, you will invest the time and resources into growing a personal brand because you know
Yeah.
that, after everything that we've said about like the statistics, how important it is for you in your business. If you want to stay where you are doing what you've been doing for a really long time, then and you're happy with that, maybe it's not for you to cultivate your personal brand. But I agree with you that that's a real shame that those people that have so much lived experience and that, wonderful charisma and confidence in every other business space don't feel that they can kind of step into that era of authority in personal branding. But I think that, oh, sorry. Go
I
on.
think no, well, I think as well, the thing I was gonna say is that I think that sometimes there's that mismatch of value. So I'll go back to what I said. So we have 800 of hours in our business, and 50% of my time and my team's time goes into cultivating a personal brand and being everywhere in content. I invest in it. I get it. I'm in the kind of well, I'm not saying I am them, but Daniel Priestley, Stephen Bartlett, Alex Hormozy, Cody Sanchez, there's loads of them, isn't there? But
Yeah.
but they spend a lot of time on content. They really value it. They invest in it. They believe in it. Um, but there's also it's really hugely valuable, the opportunities that come from it if you get it right.
Yeah.
But it does take time, and not everybody has to put half their time into it. So, sometimes when we work with people, I'll say to them, "Look, really, in the first couple of months, you might get away with 1 or 2 hours a week. For that, it might be different for you how long they have to invest, but I think we should touch on it just so that people can understand what they'd have to invest. But I tell people as we go through the stages, I think they need at least 4 or 5 hours, maybe even a day a week. They need to invest in what they want to do. What's your thoughts on that? Do they have to invest much time? Can they do it on the fly? Um,
I am a real proponent of preparation. So no, not on the fly would be my advice. I think
yeah,
if you have a strategy or you're working with someone that's supporting you in a strategy, that obviously makes it a lot easier. And in my view, that investment of time up front will save you time going forwards because apart from kind of the pivots around what engagements you are receiving from sharing that content, if you have a strategy in place, you're not floundering around for ideas on the fly, which in my view takes up more of your time, right? I think there's definitely like quick wins and simple things that you can do in order to like get going. So to your point, that first like hour or two as you start to hone your personal brand. But going forwards, if you have aspirations to, speak at conferences or be quoted in mainstream media, you need to be, writing blogs, commenting on industry research, sharing your own thought leadership on a regular basis. And that takes an amount of investment. So really it's whether, I think even if you outsource, even if you're working with somebody like you or I, ultimately you still need to put the hard yards in at home, because we can't create a personal brand out of nothing. You've got to supply us with what you want to be known for, what you stand for, what's going on in your life, what's on in your career life, how you build that out into thought leadership pillars and content calendars and all of the different platforms where you need to augment that message based on who's receiving it. And all of that is a big investment. So you need to be in it and willing to invest that time, I would say, in order to grow at a rate befitting to the investment you've put in, essentially.
It comes out of green eventually, doesn't it? I mean, if a business, unless you have a £10 million business and you're fast growing and then fine. But if the opposite is true, then you've got a few ways to go, right? You either it's outbound, it's cold calling, it's email marketing, it's sales, marketing and
Yeah.
sales outbound, or it's content creation, which this is, personal branding, content creation, um, or you're in ads, but ads is becoming more tricky. Google ads, not people are not getting so much joy from because they don't know where the ad is. Sometimes it's in the AI overlays. What happens with Google AI mode? So, and I've been speaking to a lot of people lately, maybe not getting the best results from their Google ads side of things. Facebook ads, you've still got the social ads, but again, there's no point having awareness unless you have a good funnel, right? So there's lots of things to think about there. But with certainly with content
All,
creation,
all, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and also all of the things that you've just mentioned cost you a huge amount of money.
exactly,
So,
yeah. And you've got to
whereas
keep doing it.
exactly, and you've got to keep doing it, and you've got to fail in some places in order to test and learn. And sometimes that failure can be really expensive. Whereas if you're cultivating your own personal brand, you can start doing it completely for free, and then obviously build up if you're linked to a business and things like that, to paying for certain channels in order to convey your messages. But you can start it with very little funding. You've just got to invest the time initially.
It comes down to that mindset, doesn't it? You could choose to spend all day on the phones, or you could choose to invest in your personal brand and spend all day on your personal brand. And the one is going to mean that you don't have to pick up the phone again. What sorts of mistakes can people make when it comes to personal branding?
I think the biggest one that I see over and over and over again is that people think their work speaks for itself, especially if you're talking to, like, I have three different audience personas. um, the rising leader, the transitioning executive. If your audience is obviously more kind of founders and startups and scaling businesses. But if you think about people that are already in organizations or kind of transitioning out and into other roles, I think a lot of people think like, well, I've been doing this for 20 years, or, this is my job title. Of course, people know that I'm good at my job because of XYZ. Often, people within your organization might know a small proportion of what you do and not understand all of the other things that sit around it. And that's within your organization, let alone people outside of your organization. And if they're purely looking at your LinkedIn profile and you're not posting on a regular basis, you're not sharing your thought leadership, they'd just be like, oh, okay, it's Teri Thomas, Vice President of Communications at JP Morgan. What does that mean? What's she doing? How's she creating impact within her business? You need to share your perspectives in those spaces. And even CEOs just don't do this often enough, in my own opinion. Um, So that's kind of one of the big things, I think. And I think, resistance to, and we've talked about this earlier, sort of shouting from the rooftops about what you've been doing really holds people back in that space. And people think that by being visible, it means that you're being vain. But if we go back to kind of the value creation, mindset, if you're really stepping into that, that should hopefully help you to realize that actually you're creating value for the people that follow you or the people that have connections and relationship with you by you sharing things you've learned or something that didn't go quite as well and what you've learned from it. Or like today, for example, I posted about the things that I did to prepare myself to be a podcast guest in the hope that obviously that helps someone else feel more comfortable if they ever get invited to do it or when they get invited to do it.
The hair looks lovely, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much, Dean. Listen, people take the mickey out about me having my blow dry, and all I would say is I want to step in and live and breathe what I talk to people about, right? And it makes me feel happy, confident. I spend the time going over my notes. It's a really nice hour of time that is just for me and my notes and what's going on. And when I come off the back of having my hair blow dried, because I know I'm going to be on camera, I feel like I'm my most confident.
And it's
And
about energy, right? That energy boost from it. I think one of the things you said, and I had that written down in terms of mistakes people make, and one of the things I had written down was missing LinkedIn.
yeah,
And I think that for me, I think that's really important. It's not like I love LinkedIn. I don't get paid to promote LinkedIn. But I
we
just
always both
think,
put shares in it.
yeah, I just think that I work with a lot of CEOs, and so I know that, and I say to them all the time that in the world that we live in is kind of the world where Gen Z is the next generation, so so there's all kinds of connotations to that because they tend to be very different people to my age and upwards. So I'm 44, so my age and upwards, they're very different people, and I think they want belonging, and I think they're prepared to speak out, and they want to belong somewhere. So there's more chance of retention. I haven't got a stat for it, but the stats for retention within businesses with founder-led brands with opinions is massive. The recruitment costs go down. So the ability to get the best talent, the ability to keep the best talent when you can be completely authentic as a leader, even just on one platform on LinkedIn, is incredibly important. And that's forgetting kind of deals and mergers and acquisitions and partnerships and all those things that people can see why they would want to work with someone like you. And people really do, buy from people. But that's where I think that the other mistake that I had written down is posting generic. And when you have AI, it's very easy to fall into this trap. But if anyone can say what you're saying when you post, AI is going to eat you up. It's going to eat you alive. So
Yeah,
you've got to be authentic.
I think so. And I read a stat, and I'm hoping that you are going to agree with me that I haven't got this completely wrong. But I think I read a stat that said if you are creating purely AI driven content, that actually the algorithms deprioritize what you're sharing. And I'm not quite sure what the percentage of this is, but I've read it in a few different places, and I don't know whether that's completely true or
I
not.
think it's going to be high, and here's the reason why for that is. So when we're doing, and we'll give some for free away to the channel, but they can see it in our blogs, they can see it in our YouTube videos anyway. But when we're writing blogs, there's one thing that I get my team to do, which is every single blog must have two external links out of the blog, which people say, well, that's just simple SEO. What's he talking about? That's fine, but that's to show kind of authority because AI doesn't trust me yet. It will with
Yeah,
the amount of content that I put in. But I'm not Stephen Bartlett. If Stephen Bartlett speaks, AI probably might mention it because he's got a huge, you know,
yeah,
team doing this. But the other thing is that it wants you to coin phrases. So for the very reason when we do our personal branding, we've coined a phrase, it's called the vital framework. So the V stands for visibility. And then the I stands for influence. You've got trust, you've got authority, and then you've got legacy. And so all of those different things mean something for personal branding.
Yeah.
And but AI wants you to be different, and it wants you to coin, it's looking for uniqueness. And the problem with AI writing your content is it's making you sound the same. And so it's making you uncitable.
Yeah.
So it can't trust you because there's nothing about you. There's nothing unique about your business or you. But if there was, you become automatically citable
Yeah.
because it's interesting. It's different.
I see this play out a lot, so I'm glad that we're on the same page with that because I was worried that I'd read that somewhere and it wasn't quite right. But one of the things that you just said makes sense to me because I
Yeah.
come up against it a lot where people are like, "Well, I could just use ChatGPT to help me write my content, or Perplexity, or Claude, or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, yes, you could, and you wouldn't need any advice from somebody that's going to charge you X amount of money to help you to strategize and create content strategy." But where is you in that content? AI can replicate so much content now and en masse for lots of people using very simplistic prompts that there is nothing about you in that content that you're sharing, which is obviously what you're saying
You
too,
can
right?
use it for speed. I think you can use AI for speed as you do.
Yeah.
But you have to be, your content has to have uniqueness. It has to have, you know, so I think anyone who's going to try and create content these days without the use of AI is just going to probably fall behind anyway, because that you kind of want to use AI with your intelligence, your high intelligence, your opinions, your agency, and then use AI to help you go faster. So there's absolutely nothing wrong if my team are writing a blog and they want to use AI to get the research, to get the statistics, to do the deep research, to come up with a baseline. But if they're gonna spit me an AI document, it's going straight back to them because
Yeah.
that's not unique. What's unique about it, anyone could write it. So it's not gonna get cited, so it goes straight back to them. So they don't do it. It's well researched, it's well founded, and it's structured in a way that AI likes.
Yeah.
And the content would be the same that we do for that. But if people wanted an idea of how they, so the other things that you can do if you're building a personal brand is you can have person schema. So on your website, as an overall, people can have like, from the company side of things, they'd have like a standalone FAQ page that answers like 20 questions that people ask most often. That can have all of your keywords and questions, because people target questions now, real term things that people type in, not keywords anymore. So it can have all of those on there, but you can put person schema on your website. So that is a piece of code that goes onto your website that tells you how amazing it is. So on our website, you would have the awards that we've won. So in schema markup, and there would be a schema markup just for me as a person on there. And if you're doing personal branding and you have your own personal website as well, again, you want to have your person schema on there. You want to think about having a LinkedIn channel, because LinkedIn's a huge part of citability for authority. So some kind of authority marketing. Um, so thought leadership, etc. YouTube, again, one of the biggest citable sources. Reddit. So if you can communicate with the audience, but whatever you're doing, whether it's podcasts are answer engines, because by nature of its ask question, answer question, ask question. So you want to kind of write your content in a way that just answers 55 million questions over the next year. Because when somebody then is asking that question, the AI is going to decide, does it know, like, and trust you? Well, if they've done a personal brand with you or I, it's going to know, like, and trust you. The only answer then is,
Yeah.
well, do they help me to answer any questions?
Yeah.
Is there structure to it? Like, so the schema is important, because sometimes they don't want to read about you or I. They just want the data to tell us, well, look, they've got this award, there's this news article, there's this PR story, all in some computer talk. So
Yeah.
there's some funky ways that they can use or do some extra things that help them to, um, but then you still want to get testimonials. You still want to, and you probably want to have review schema, and you probably want to get PR, and there's all those things that come into it.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, that's really interesting, actually.
Mm.
I like that.
Food for thought. Um, so what other mistakes can they make? Have we missed anything? Or do you think we've covered everything so that
No, I think we've covered it because we've then like we've used some of those points in other questions anyway, where we've talked about resistance holding people back, confidence. We obviously talked about being a Brit and not wanting to like overtly fluff our feathers. Um I
what
think
about who you're looking for, Terry? Who would you be looking for to work with? Who's the perfect client for you?
perfect client for me. Um, Look, I think I mentioned this earlier. I have three main audience personas in terms of clients. So I work with rising leaders, and they're typically people that are either working within an organization or have had a change within their career, and they want to have some quite tactical, short-term support. Um, they they're kind of they're not necessarily like exactly who I want all of the time. However, very happy to work with those types of leaders. Then, secondly, transitioning executives. So they really are people that might have had a long-standing career within a certain area and are now branching out to become first-time business owners, or they might be moving into a new role with a lot more visibility. So, kind of from leadership team to CEO or director or spokesperson for a company. They might be stepping onto the public stages, chief financial officer for the first time when they've always worked in kind of the, accounting and finance function. So those types of people that might need a lot more support to feel comfortable being visible and to leverage their platform of thought leadership. And then really the kind of holy grail of client for me is founders and scaling businesses. So the reason that I say this is because a lot of your audience are these people, Dean. So sorry. It's because I really enjoy utilizing my experience and expertise from organizations like JP Morgan, where I was building Marcom strategies and campaigns regularly to help them to brand build for their business overall, but then working with the founder or founders of that business to utilize their strengths and thought leadership. So it's more of a cross channel marketing strategy, and the personal brand of the founder is one component of a broader strategy to drive visibility for the overall business. So I'm mainly working with transitioning executives, and then the founders and scaling businesses. That tends to be where I spend a lot of my time.
One of the things that I quite like is that, and it's why I was completely comfortable with bringing another personal branding expert onto my channel, um, is purely because, like we talked about, people do buy from people, and I think so. There's going to be, certain types of people, and it might be that women resonate to you and men resonate to me, or it might be that there's all sorts of reasons why people pick people, don't they? So, I am definitely not for everybody. That's for certain. So,
I don't
uh,
think that's true. That's not true.
but that means that you are for some people and you work with some people, and so I think that's great that we can bring someone else to the channel, which brings them choice. And this channel isn't about us trying to sell to people; it's about trying to give them value. So hopefully, they'll find the conversation useful, and we can give them a bit of value. So it's good.
I hope so too. It's honestly been such a pleasure to chat with you. And it's really nice to have like a new connection with somebody that works in this space that utilizes slightly different but very much complementary methods to drive personal branding. And, the fact that you've obviously created this channel 10 weeks ago and already have made that commitment to create so much content just, goes to show that you are very committed to this space and you're very much practicing what you preach. So, congratulations to you and the team. It really is a great feat that you've done that so quickly, Dean.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure having you because you are wonderful. Um,
Thank you very
but
much.
genuinely, I'm hoping for our audience that that you can take from this the kind of inspiration, if you like, to just start and do something and gather pace. And I think that's what's really important right now, is just believing in yourself, and knowing that everybody has a personal brand and you have a story to tell. And in a sea of AI content that is coming, there is only one you. So be unapologetically you, and really value that and buy into that. So hopefully we've helped people to understand that and feel that they maybe can do that. And then they're going to reach out to Teri and say, how can you help me with that? Or they'll say, oh, Dean's fun. I'll reach out to Dean. Yes.
Definitely. Or we can collaborate, Dean.
Well, we can, yeah. So, um, but I think as well, there's the distribution side, and so I think a lot of people come to us for the distribution side. We do the kind of consultative side as well. Um, so maybe there's the two different sides there as well. So, but look, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and have a wonderful evening, I guess.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to chat to you. And keep me posted on the campaign around the podcast, and I will share away, and hopefully you get lots more guests on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some planned. I've
Amazing.
got some really amazing people planned.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Chat to you
You're wel-
soon.
All right.
Take
Speak.
care. Bye.